was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie, please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello, I'm Penny S.T., and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. Today we'll be speaking with Dr. Norbert Goldfield, founder and executive director of Healing Across the Divides, or HATD. Healing Across the Divides is an organization of American medical professionals who assist their Israeli and Palestinian counterparts in creating bridge-building programs that improve the health of both Israelis and Palestinians. Established 17 years ago, their mission is to measurably improve the health of marginalized people living in the Palestinian Territories and Israel via community-based intervention. They have funded and provided technical consultation to more than 50 community-based groups in the Palestinian Territories and Israel, and they have positively impacted the health and well-being of more than 200,000 Palestinians and Israelis. By partnering with other foundations in the United States and overseas, their Israeli and Palestinian staff, board, and outside experts provide consultation to the community groups during their 3-year grant cycles. This is peace building, utilizing the health community as a conduit for change. Dr. Norbert Goldfield is the founder and executive director of Healing Across the Divides. He is a practicing internist at a community health center with over 30 years of experience restructuring healthcare systems, both at a national level and in community settings, as well as extensive experience working with Israelis and Palestinians. He's also an author and has published more than 50 books and articles. So let's get started. Welcome, Norbert.
It's a joy to be with you, and thanks so much for the opportunity.
It's great to have you with us. How would you describe Healing Across the Divides?
Well, it's interesting because our mission has remained exactly the same as it was when we first started in 2004. There's some organizations that have mission creep, they change, and so on and so forth. But in part because the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has not resolved itself, and also in part because we have a particular focus, which is to say that we work with community-based groups to measurably improve the health of marginalized Israelis and Palestinians. We bring them together as much as we can, but at the end of the day, our long-term hope is not only will these community groups increase their effectiveness and impact through the projects that we fund and provide technical advice for, but our dream maybe not in my lifetime, will be that some of these leaders of some of these groups, and they are truly amazing, will be of tomorrow's political leaders, both in Israel and in Palestine.
What are some of the initiatives that you work on?
So why don't we just start with what we're currently doing? You know, in Israel, we're funding a joint farm, which seems like not really related to health, but in fact it is directly related to health because the outcome that we're looking at is improved nutrition. It's a joint farm between Israeli Bedouin and Israeli Jews in the southern part of Israel. We have another initiative working with African refugee asylum seekers. And there were about 100,000, close to 100,000 African refugee asylum seekers who are not Jewish, who have found their way to Israel. And there are approximately 30,000 who are still left. And we're funding an intervention that looks at storytelling to improve their dealing with psychic trauma that has occurred to almost all the women who were sexually trafficked while they were traversing through the Sinai. And this is through an organization called Kuchinate, where they're doing handcrafts and other types of artistic craft endeavors to support themselves. So it's a combination of a mental health intervention and an economic intervention. A second example of the work that we're doing in Israel is a project that we're just finishing up, actually, working with an organization that's looking at childhood safety, where they're working with the communities to improve the childhood safety in the home. So we're looking particularly in domestic accidents that occur in the home. In the West Bank, we're funding an initiative that looks at diabetes using a program that was developed at Stanford called Chronic Disease Self-Management, and which is a lay-led intervention. So that's one example. Another example is a program that's occurring in one of the refugee camps called Kalandia. That's just starting. A program that's looking at improved nutrition for families, children, and the entire family, looking at improved nutrition. That actually just started just a few weeks ago.
That's exciting. Yeah, you have just so many wonderful projects. What are your goals?
The goal goes back to the mission and how we accomplish our mission, which is to say, we specifically and only fund community-based groups, both in Israel and in Palestine. We only fund community-based groups. We don't do the work ourselves. And secondly, what we clearly want to accomplish at a minimum is measurable improvement in health for the people that are served by these community groups. And then, as I indicated, we have much bigger dreams as we hope that as I indicated, that even if it doesn't happen in my lifetime, certainly some of the leaders of some of these groups are just amazing. And I know that some of them could easily be some of tomorrow's political leaders.
So how many grants do you give, and about how much are they?
Sure. So we anywhere between 6 to 10 grants, which range from anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 per year for 3 years. And they're 3-year grant cycles. The idea is in the first year, they kind of test out what they're trying to accomplish. Then if it works, the second year is to go full throttle and really try to implement it. And the third year is to continue it while they start to work with us and others to try to see about possibly getting some additional funds, because these are 3-year grants.
Awesome. Before we go much further, I wanted to show a clip some of your work to get a better understanding of the terrific projects that HATD supports. So why don't we take a look at that?
In 2019, HATD funded its first project in Gaza. Diabetes Palestine utilizes the evidence-based chronic disease self-management program, a comprehensive approach developed at Stanford University to help young people with type 1 diabetes.
Like the first point that I wanted to say about the program is the teamwork that we had. It's like the first time since I was diagnosed with diabetes that I've seen like people work as a team regarding helping adolescents with diabetes. And I love the program because it focused on things that us in the Arab world don't talk about that much. When we talk about the psychosocial aspect of diabetes, when we talk about like your mental health, people in the Arab world or here in the Middle East don't talk about those things that much. It's only about what you eat. It's only about how much you exercise. So they don't focus on other factors that affect your diabetes.
B'Terem, known as Safe Kids Israel in English, illustrates two of the goals of HATD: saving lives through direct intervention and empowering women. Working to decrease rates of child accidents and fatalities, which are especially high in Arab and Jewish Orthodox communities. In the village of Turan, which is a low-income Israeli Arab community, our grantee, B'Terem, trained local senior women to remedy in-home problems in child safety. The initiative examined the effectiveness of a home visit intervention program, providing an evidence-based child safety intervention. For example, once trained, a grandmother would do an audit in a home looking at possible danger points for children. The fact that grandmothers were the ones teaching families about what they can do to reduce childhood injuries, accompanied by the appreciation of the population, generated a lot of pride and respect in the village. The program was extremely successful. These efforts garnered B'Terem 2 prizes in recognition of the accomplishments of this initiative: the 2018 Israeli Minister of Welfare Award, and the second prize for excellence in home safety at the 2017 Safe Kids Worldwide Childhood Injury Prevention Convention.
The next video is of White Hill Farms, a project of HATD that brings together Jews and Bedouin Arabs in neighboring communities in the Negev. The goals for this project are to improve health, raise awareness around nutrition and the environment, and coexistence.
The White Hill Farm, here the first slide shows you, this was a piece of desert that the municipality, it was a dream that our Bedouin neighbors and Jews from Yerucham had for about 5 years now. That we started discussing the possibility of having a place where we could raise vegetables and connect with each other and learn about healthy lifestyles, but also connecting to nature and responsibility for the desert that we love and share. These are just some of the pictures of the life at the farm, where what we decided when we saw that it was very, very difficult for cultural and logistic reasons to bring women, for instance, Jewish and Bedouin women at the same time to the farm to promote family plots. We brought kindergarten children with the idea that at the early ages, if we break down stereotypes and create opportunities for getting to know each other and also teach about healthy lifestyles, it can affect also the parents and the families. And just to show you cauliflower, zucchini, tomatoes, all of the signs of the vegetables are in Arabic and Hebrew. These are pictures that Issam sent me of shakshuka and healthy breakfast with cauliflower and tomato casseroles and things like that. And all of the pita is with whole wheat flour.
The story of the farm and the communities of Yerucham and Rachma working together was picked up by Israeli television. Here is the program.
This small farm on the outskirts of Yerucham is a perfect example of the coexistence between the two settlements. We can see Jewish and Bedouin children playing together and sharing different experiences.
Before the coronavirus pandemic, people from Yerucham arrived here 3 times a week. There is also a joint robotic class for Rachme and Yerucham, and there are many other activities. The children enjoy it a lot.
This initiative has a great value from different aspects: educational, environmental, and also political. It brings us together with our neighbors, connect us to the earth, and also add some educational values which our children don't get in school.
What attracted me to Yerucham was that it's like a microcosm of Israeli society, and it's a place where what I see is the real Israel, where you're not in an Anglo bubble or a circle of people who are similar to you, but it's a place where you meet Israel in all its incredible diversity, with the challenges, and also with incredible people who are really trying to figure out how to live together in the best way possible.
Well, that's really terrific programs that you have. HATD does incredible work, and besides being an internist, as we've said, you've also written many books, and one came out last year called Peace Building Through Women's Health. We spoke recently on Peace with Penny with 2 women's peace organizations, Itach Ma'aki, Women's Lawyers for Social Justice, and Shin, the Israeli Movement for Equal Representation of Women. I'm interested now in what you've written about the impact on peace through women's health. So if you could please tell us about it and why you decided to write this book.
Yeah, the reality is that women are the most discriminated against people in the world. It's as simple as that. On the hand. On the other hand, if you empower women, you don't just empower themselves. You also empower the whole family, and you engage with the whole community. So that's what's dramatic about engaging with women. The book itself is essentially the story of healing across divides placed into a much wider framework. So there are introductory and concluding chapters that pertain to, at the end of the day, the fact that, as Rashid Khalidi stated in a recent book, what we have in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are 2 nationalisms that are competing to live on the same land. And so the question is whether or not there are people who can appreciate that there are these 2 nationalisms and can somehow find accommodation. So speaking for myself, I as an American can't do that. So instead of, though I wish I could, I wish I was one of the 10 or 15 people who could work from the top down, but we work from the bottom up. We work through community groups. These community groups are led by women almost exclusively, but not completely. And our hope and our aim is to empower these groups, but at a minimum, and this is what we've seen, is to measurably improve the health of hundreds of thousands of marginalized Israelis and Palestinians.
Oh, that's fantastic. One of your many wonderful projects is you just got back from your 2022 study tour. Can you talk about what that is and what a study tour is, who takes you on it, what the purpose is?
So the study tour is really the best way for anyone to get a feeling or a sense as to what's going on with the grantees, and at the same time, eat great food. Israel and Palestine is just simply spectacular, and see wonderful sights. The study tour is once a year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do it during COVID, but we had one just now, it just finished. And I was really to put it in a positive way, obsessing to make sure that, as you can see, that except when we're eating, everybody's wearing masks. And we wanted to be sure that anybody who we met with was tested beforehand. And I'm happy to say that no one got COVID.
Yay.
All these study tours or cruises or whatever, where people, get COVID. And that's an issue that if I could avoid, I wanted to do that. But the bottom that the study tour, in addition to seeing grantees, in addition to everything else I mentioned, it's what's called a dual narrative study tour, which is to say there's an Israeli guide and a Palestinian guide. And this is done under the auspices of a wonderful tour operator called Mejdi, M-E-J rather, B-I, Mejdi Tours. And there's an Israeli and a Palestinian guide who basically give, their perspectives from their cultures, their nationalisms on the same events, on the same land, which can be quite different. Again, the question is how there can be accommodation between these two populations. So that's what you get a really clear sense of. And we spend time in Israel, we spend time all over the West Bank, all over Israel, and people come away seeing amazing people and feeling good in their stomach and having seen amazing sights.
And who's going on these tours?
So the people from all over the United States, most recently, for example, we had people from Texas, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts. Some are health professionals, some are not. Some have never been to the region, some have been many times. And I can say that some of the people who have been many times, for example, to Israel, have come on 2 of the study tours because clearly we have new grantees to showcase each time. So it's a whole range of people with a whole range of backgrounds and a whole range of interests, but who at a minimum are curious and are interested in trying to understand what's going on in a conflict, which is one of the longest running conflicts in the world today.
And are they from different religions as well? Yeah,
good point, good question. Christians, Muslims, Jews, atheists or agnostics, they have every religious background or non-religious background.
Well, I see that you're enjoying some wonderful food and it's making me hungry, so I think I want to move on to the next slide. Let's see. You have this project called Yes Drama Therapy. Can you explain what exactly that is?
Yeah, so there's an intervention, form of mental health therapy, essentially. There are many different types of mental health therapy. It's a type of therapy, frankly, that I didn't know too much about until the proposal came in. The way we operate is that we decide, what kind of funds we have available. We may put out a call for proposals if we haven't spent funds yet. And this proposal came in that for an initiative called Drama Therapy, which works with Palestinians in Hebron and the South Hebron Hills. So where there's a fair amount of tension and in both of those areas. But this is specifically with Palestinians, asking the question as to how, in essence, they can deal with some of the challenges they have with their everyday lives. And it's been quite successful. And we've, in fact, looking to the possibility of identifying a partner in Israel to see if they might be able to continue in some form, because we're always looking for sustainability.
Well, that looks like there's so many issues there that that would be helpful. Those are teens, am I correct?
Right, those are teens. So there's teens, young mothers who are participants, and both teenage boys and girls. And this, I think, in this photograph that everybody sees, it's just only women, but there's both boys and girls, teenagers, and young mothers who are participating.
And you have a number of groups that have worked on ending domestic violence against women and girls. Can you talk about them?
Yeah, unfortunately, similar to the situation in the United States, the synagogue, which I've been president of, has in the men's bathroom, who to contact in terms of there's the domestic violence. Unfortunately, domestic violence is ever present in every society, going back to the point that I made before, that just a manifestation of the fact that women are truly the most discriminated against people in the world. And we have several different initiatives in the area of domestic violence. One in Israel and one in the West Bank. The one in the West Bank was quite interesting. The low-income populations everywhere are often more obese, are in fact more obese than people who are middle class or upper class. That obesity is a health issue, and the Family Defense Society, in a program that is completed but was very successful, they wanted to identify obese Palestinian women as to identify people who are at risk for domestic violence. Why were they interested in the topic? Because they operated the first domestic violence shelter in the West Bank, and what they did then is worked on this same Stanford program that you heard that was being implemented in Gaza, which is this chronic disease self-management program. And in this case, with the Family Defense Society, it was pertaining to obesity. And what they did was they worked with women on obesity and then identified women who are at the same time at risk for domestic violence as one form of intervention. Is
there some kind of correlation between obesity and domestic violence?
That's a good question. It's not so much the correlation between the two, but oftentimes people who are obese, there's a correlation between that and depression. Not always, I want to emphasize. I'll be seeing patients all day tomorrow as an internist. So some individuals who are obese have a propensity towards depression. And the question is why are they depressed? And to identify those women who may have elements or aspects of either physical or psychological abuse.
That's unfortunately prevalent and hard to hear. And then you empower women through many health initiatives. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. We funded an Orthodox several Orthodox Jewish interventions, and that pertain to issues of breast cancer. There was a hesitancy, less so today, but still present, among some Orthodox Jewish women who were concerned that if they were found out that they had the breast cancer gene or the BRCA gene, that their daughters would be less marriageable. And so we funded two different interventions, one in Bnei Brak, one in a part of Jerusalem, and the intervention was working with community health workers, all of whom were Orthodox Jewish women, on an intervention to increase mammography rates. The program was so successful that, in fact, not only were several rabbis promulgated edicts saying that women should participate and should be engaged, not only with the community health workers who are Orthodox Jewish women very satisfied with the work, but in fact, two of the managed organizations and the Israeli healthcare system is very much operated through managed care organizations. Two of the main managed care organizations adopted the program. And so that's one aspect of empowering women through health initiatives as an example. There are many more, but that's a good way to start.
Fantastic. And here we have, it's very interesting, the African refugee asylum seekers. That's a whole issue and a half, I think, in Israel. Can you talk about the population, the culture, and how they're received, and what you try to help them with?
Yeah, so this is a group of approximately, initially about 80,000 Black Africans from Eritrea, Sudan, Ethiopia, who are fleeing either the genocide in Darfur or incredibly repressive regimes in either Ethiopia or Eritrea. And they were told that if they made it to Israel, that they could somehow get out of their very difficult situation. Unfortunately, the situation was not that simple in Israel. Virtually no one in Israel who is an African refugee asylum seeker has received a political asylum, just less than 10, in fact. But
Wow. Why is that?
Well, the reality is the state of Israel does not want these African refugee asylum seekers to be integrated into Israeli society. They're not Jewish. They are extremely discriminated against. They are in many ways the most discriminated against people in Israel. The approximately 50,000 have received resettled in Canada, the US, and the European Union, but there's still about 30,000 left. And Healing Across Divides has always funded, over the last few years, at least one program pertaining to African refugee asylum seekers. I myself am a child of Holocaust survivors, and there's a wonderful photograph that I have in my home, which I can simply describe, of 10 individuals, 5 Holocaust survivors interlocking arms with 5 refugee asylum seekers. And unfortunately, the refugee asylum seekers in Israel are extremely and extremely discriminated against. But the bottom line is that we continue to support at least one program. The most recent program that we're supporting is an organization called Kuchinate that works with economic empowerment of women. Again, another aspect of empowering women. Clearly, economic needs are important. There's also psychic trauma that these women have experienced, with a large percentage of them having been sexually trafficked in the Sinai on their way to Israel. They have their own difficulties of all sorts of challenges within Israel. And the intervention that we're funding with Kuchinate is a combination of storytelling and partly the economic empowerment, which is through making of crafts and art.
It seems like you've got quite a cross-section of cultures that you work with. Can you talk about the different ones that you work with?
I think we've worked with virtually every culture in the region. We have funded initiatives with Ethiopian Jews. So these are individuals from Ethiopia who are Jewish. So they're full citizens of Israel. Unfortunately, they're extremely discriminated against, in large measure because they're Black. So unfortunately, as often, unfortunately, Blacks in this country, but Blacks in Ethiopia, Blacks in Israel, even if they're Jewish, are discriminated against. And what's amazing is that there was no diabetes in Ethiopia for all practical purposes. And now that they've resettled in Israel, they have a completely different lifestyle. They're extremely poor on average. So they're also very marginalized, not as poor as African refugee asylum seekers, who again are not Jewish, but they're very poor. And that 0% of diabetes has ballooned to 15%.
Wow.
Amount of obesity. And so we've worked with several different initiatives working on diabetes in Ethiopian Jews. But we've every different ethnic group. We've certainly worked with Sephardic Jews. The farm that I described before, that was described in the film clip, is almost all Sephardic Jews who are living in Yerucham.
And you also are dealing with Bedouins?
Yes, so we've several programs. The most recent program that just finishing up is the joint farm between mostly Sephardic Jews, but not exclusively, in Yerucham and Bedouin in the what is called the unrecognized village of Rachmeh. And unrecognized means that they get no services, municipal services like garbage disposal, running water, or anything of the nature. And so what's been very good, and the White Hill Farm that we have funded for the last few years has been part of it, not the only part at all, but been part of bringing these two communities together. And part of the outcome of these two communities is not just improved nutrition, which is one of the outcomes that they're looking at, but improved communication. And what it resulted in is that improved communication has resulted in the Jews of Yerucham lobbying the Israeli government to offer recognition and recognized status for the unrecognized village of Rachmeh. And so that's a beginning, a process that takes a long time, but the first step has already occurred, which means that, in fact, we were there most recently in March on our study tour. We saw an elementary school that was just built and it was just opened a few months ago for the unrecognized village of Rachmeh. Hopefully that will only increase. But that's part of the outcome of the improved communication between the Sephardic Jews and Jews of Yerucham and the Israeli Bedouin.
And your projects with the Palestinians?
So the Palestinians, the interventions that we're currently funding, we've already mentioned the Yes Theater intervention. Mentioned also briefly the project on the refugee camp. A brand new initiative also that just started in December is with an Israeli organization where the director is Jewish, and this organization called Ladat is working with Palestinian women in East Jerusalem on issues of reproductive rights and sexuality. And it was very interesting. You know, during the study tour, we met with this group, and we met with two Palestinian women who were working on the project and the Israeli Jewish director. And one of the people on the study tour asked, well, you know, sometimes these days there's less and less interaction between Palestinians and Jews, between Palestinians, you know, in the West Bank, or Palestinians in East Jerusalem, and Jews in Jerusalem or in Israel. You know, give us your take on that. And the response for me was just, you know, rather dramatic. And that is to say, you know, you're right. There is increasing tension. You're right. There is less communication. But you know what? We are women first. And that overrides everything. And we are working on issues that are of great concern to women. And we're pleased to be working on this initiative. Just an amazing group of women.
Yes, I've seen that just speaking today with the issue of the environment as well, you know, in the area, the fact that, you know, the environment doesn't realize if you're Israeli or Palestinian or Jordanian, you know, living in the same area. It sometimes helps to work on an issue that you're all concerned of, and you know, you're also working on peace because you're learning how to get along and hear others' opinions, etc., from very divergent opinions. So it's whatever makes it happen is terrific. What work do you do with actually Jewish Israelis?
So I've already mentioned some of the projects.
Right. I was really curious, what is the cause? I know you've got this terrific project with the grandmothers and teaching safety. Is it because the Orthodox have so many children? What is causing so many safety issues?
The combination of lots of children, but more importantly is poverty. And so you have unfinished banisters, you know, and there's also the issue of engagement, education. So the child safety project that I highlighted, that was mentioned in the film clip, that has been implemented. It's just finishing up now, but that has been implemented in a number of places, including the Palestinian town, Israeli Palestinian or Israeli Arab towns of Turan and Al-Fahim, and in the Jewish towns of Carmiel, and in the Orthodox Jewish section of Haifa. So it's been implemented in 4 sites, 2 Jewish and 2 non-Jewish sites. And I should point out, we have, which we haven't mentioned so far, we have a representative in Israel who's Jewish, and a representative in the West Bank who's Palestinian and is Muslim. And we, of course, meet as staff every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's another way for Jews and Palestinians to engage with each other.
How would you describe your supporters, and how many of them do you have?
So our supporters are almost all individual supporters in the United States. Throughout the United States, we have hundreds of supporters from all over the United States, from New York City to Los Angeles, from Seattle to Florida, but it's not but. We're just so pleased that we have these individual supporters from all over the United States, and that's how we operate.
You've got quite a budget.
Well, our budget is modest, which is to say,
well,
about $400,000 a year.
To some of us, that sounds big.
Okay, well, I think that's it all. What it is big in the sense that one can fund amazing numbers of community health projects. Because community health is inexpensive, so that's what you really can do. And we believe in health. We believe that community health, working from the bottom up, is an important part of peace building, but that also leads to measurable improvement in health and is inexpensive.
So what did COVID do to your programs?
Depends on the program. Some of them just flourished. So, for example, we in the film clip, you saw the teenagers talking the chronic disease self-management. Well, they switched completely to WhatsApp and other communication by telephone, and the teenagers loved it. They'd much rather be on that than meeting. On the other hand, that the farm did not do so well. So because basically it was shut down. You couldn't, the Israeli Jews and the Israeli Arabs together, there'd be different waves of COVID hitting different populations at different times. So it really depends on the initiative. I'd say on average, most of them did just fine, but my own style is to be transparent. Most of them, but some, such as the program with the farm, it's definitely not easy at all.
So because many Israelis or Palestinians don't speak each other's languages, how do you deal with that?
Good question. So that what I find is that certainly the leaders in Israel of the initiatives, whether they be Israeli, Arab, or Palestinian, and the Jewish, they all speak Hebrew. But it's for sure the participants in the program very often do not, for example, speak the dominant language in Israel, which is Hebrew. In the West Bank, it's all in Arabic.
Right.
And so that's much simpler. But the leaders of many of the community groups that we're funding in Israel all speak Hebrew.
So what would you consider some of your greatest accomplishments for your organization?
Yeah, I mean, what's great is when initiatives can be taken over, and several of the initiatives have been taken over. I already highlighted some of them. There was a prenatal care intervention that was taken over by the Israeli government that worked out, very well. And similarly, other interventions have been taken over. On the other hand, in the West Bank, the reality is that the economy is very much a donor-based economy. It's not a functioning economy. There's really not a functioning healthcare system in the West Bank. There's sort of different like micro health systems, and sustainability is more difficult. In fact, it's practically impossible. We continue to work together with the grantees to try to see what we can, but it's always very, very challenging, for sure. That said, the reality is that we work with the grantee to measurably improve health of the participants. And one grantee that was not able to continue did an intervention on drug abuse in teens in East Jerusalem. Incredible impact, several thousand participants, good impact in terms of the outcomes. And one sometimes has to be satisfied with the outcomes that one achieves the grant cycle. And we've done that for all practical purposes every time, though I want to also make sure we are a risk-taking organization. Not every grant works. And if after, it seems that it's not working, that's okay too. But the vast majority of the interventions has resulted in measurable improvement in health. And as I just gave the example of the drug abuse intervention, or the one that you heard about in terms of diabetes. And
you've done a lot of work with HIV and AIDS too, correct?
Yeah, yes. So there's an initiative that we did with African refugee asylum seekers on HIV in Israel. A significant issue, a significant problem.
Excuse me.
Labriut, or bless you. And that was a very successful intervention, but again, very challenging because African refugee asylum seekers, as I've already pointed out, are not able to get healthcare services like Israeli citizens are. And so this is a much more hit and miss as to what kind of medication could be provided, almost always second-tier medication for HIV. But there was a whole intervention that was quite successful to try to engage from a sense of well-being and a sense of change in behavior.
I had read in various documents that you've provided training and technical support valued at over $600,000 to your community groups you work with. That's fabulous. What type of training and technical support?
So the biggest area that we work with is is one of two. Number one is the evaluations themselves. So when the Defense Society that I highlighted before made their proposal on issues of obesity, we said, why not consider this chronic disease self-management program as an opportunity? And not only did they think that that was a great idea, we then worked with them to identify the instruments, the evaluation tools that they would utilize. Or take the example that I spoke about just a minute ago about drug abuse for teens in East Jerusalem. The organization was a strong organization, a good organization. They were going to implement a program called DARE, which was basically a program that was shown to not only not decrease drug use, but actually increase drug use.
Really?
And so it's not a validated program, but we said, look, you're a good organization. Let's work together and identify an approach. And we had access to some of the best experts in the world on drug abuse. They identified a program called Unplugged that has been translated and validated in Arabic. And we're able to get a hold of the one person who was trained in Unplugged, who was an Egyptian psychiatrist who was living in Dubai at the time. And he did the training by Skype. This was 10 years ago. So
wow.
Our work is both to identify a great organization, to give them a grant, to help them identify the best way to approach what they want to accomplish, to evaluate it. And both of our representatives in Israel and in Palestine are also available to do management consulting on any issues that come up from a management perspective.
Well, I know you're scientists, or your background is in science and you like stats and all that, but do you have any stories about, people that you've worked with and how you've helped them?
I would say so many, that's what's amazing, but let me just give you one. I was doing training. I'm a master trainer in this program called Chronic Disease Self-Management at Stanford, and by a colleague named Professor Kate Lord. And I was doing training of a new group in the West Bank. And so I do not speak Arabic. I was working with the English language version. They were working with the Arabic language version. And a very part of this training, it's a very intensive training, is they start teaching very quickly. And there was a woman who was very clearly an amazing teacher. I could see it. And I started to talk with her through a translator. And she speaks English, so she understands quite a bit. And never worked in her life, but wanted to, somehow had heard about this and was working through this community group. And then what happened is not only did she become trained in chronic disease self-management, she began to work with another community group. They put a proposal, and this was her first job. She had been a mother for decades, and she became director of the program.
Well, then she definitely worked. I would say most people have worked very hard all their lives. They don't always get paid for it, though.
Absolutely, good point, and I appreciate it. But she was not outside the home.
Yes,
this was her first job outside the home, and she was just an amazing person and was so engaged with the work, so appreciative of the work, and very much part of the new leadership that, as far as I'm concerned, is the kind of leadership that I think both Israel and Palestine, certainly can benefit from.
Well, I always like to talk to the people that I interview about what got them interested in these endeavors. I know you have a fascinating personal story, even from the time you were born, etc. So let's start there. Where were you born?
I was born in Florence, Italy. I speak Italian fluently. My first language was Italian. I'll never forget the day when I came to the United States when I was just over 5, and I was just shocked. I could not speak a word of English, and I was trying to speak to my aunt who could not speak Italian, and so it was definitely a shock to me. But of course, I learned English very fast, and I've lived in the United States since then. But I've gone back to Italy, virtually every year, and I've worked in Italy in a variety of different capacities.
So are there very many Italian Jews?
There are not a lot of Italian Jews. My mother was a Florentine Jew. My father was an Austrian Jew who, as he said, found himself to be lucky enough to be in Italy during World War II, which was very difficult. And of course, a fair number of the Italian Jews were killed.
Wasn't he in a concentration camp of sorts?
In Italy, yes, and several, but they were not death camps, but still not a hotel by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of suffering, a lot of malaria, but he survived. And my mother was in hiding in Tuscany. She was from Florence, and they met after the war, and I was born after the war, and then we came to the United States and lived in the United States, as I said, the rest of my life. I love the United States, but of course, I'm happy to go back to Italy at least once a year.
I don't blame you. You speak lots of languages. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, not as many as I'd like. I do speak Italian, Spanish, a little bit of French, and English. I've gone to Ulpan to learn Hebrew twice, but with my family that I have in Israel, they sort of gave up on trying to speak with me. So look, just speak English. Right.
Oops.
Yeah.
Well, it's, all languages. You have to have somebody to practice them with. So
That's right.
yeah. So just the fact that you attempted it is fantastic. So why did you found Healing Across the Divides?
So I'm one of those people that recognizes that, first of all Americans, whether they know it or not, are involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Israel is the largest recipient of foreign aid from the United States. Egypt is the second largest recipient of foreign aid. And so all Americans are very much involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And in addition, I feel as an American and as a Jew that my fate is somehow tied to what's going on in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I visited Israel for the first time in 1967 after the 64. I worked at Hadassah Hospital in 1980 for several months when I went over for several months with my wife that I was newly married to. Then I came with both kids. I have a 39-year-old and a 34-year-old now, but we went in 1996 with Jerusalem, and that's when I started working from an internal medicine point of view in the West Bank. And I started thinking about ways, and I've always thought about ways of how I could be engaged in a positive way, in a measurable way, in a concrete way in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And as I've already highlighted, even though I wish I was, I'm not one of the 10 or 15 people who could make a difference from the top down. So I work from the bottom up. I work in healthcare. There's no other initiative that works with Israelis and Palestinians. So I founded Healing Across the Divides in 2004, and we're still strong and going, and we're happy to be doing the work that we're doing.
It's a fantastic organization, obviously. Really, as your last question, what do you see as the strongest growing medical needs in Israel and in the Palestinian territories that Healing Across the Divides can help with during the next 5 years, say?
Right. So the biggest issues that confront, from a community health perspective, that confront Israelis and Palestinians who are marginalized are in many ways the challenges that afflict marginalized people everywhere, except that it's compounded by the fact that there's an ongoing conflict. Certainly we read, those of us who read the local newspapers, in the region, hear about an Israeli or a Palestinian who are killed almost every day. So there's the diseases of poverty are exacerbated by the ongoing conflict. And those are mental health diabetes diseases, cancer, breast cancer, in particular on both sides of the aisle, with rates that are increasing. So it's unfortunately diseases of poverty exacerbated by the diseases of war, and the two fortunately make a soup that is really very challenging, but one that we can rise up to in a modest but concrete way.
Yeah, I would imagine the PTSD the whole nation has it, I would think.
Depends on certainly numbers that have been identified, certainly as it pertains to the marginalized and the poor on both sides. And unfortunately, that's a situation that exists for the African refugee asylum seekers. It certainly exists for the Palestinians that are being worked with through Yes Theater in both Hebron and in particular the South Hebron Hills. There's a town there that could be evacuated or displaced as new refugees due to a Supreme Court decision that was just announced last week.
Well, at times, I'm not certain I recovered from our trip in 2014. Running to bomb shelters, feeling the percussion of the exploding bombs, even though it's in the air and it could be miles away, you feel it on your skin. It it gets your attention, and it just, I mean, it did something to me for sure. But living with that happening so often, I just can't even imagine what that does to people. Anyway, but thanks so much for your time today, Norbert. It's great to hear about an organization that helps Israelis and Palestinians work together for the health of their communities. Next week, we'll begin a two-part series with the Eastern Mediterranean International School, or EMIS, which brings together Israeli Jews and Arabs, Palestinians, and international students from across national and cultural divides for a life-changing high school experience. EMIS is a nonprofit founded in 2014 and is home to 190 students. 20% are Israeli Jews and Arab, 20% come from Arab and Muslim nations, and 60% hail from 40 other countries around the world. Each brings their own identity and perspective, and together they weave a colorful tapestry that welcomes difference while finding common ground. Students live and learn together for 2 years in a vibrant community that celebrates pluralism, nurtures entrepreneurship, and fosters outstanding academic skills. As you can see, many people are working very hard to improve the lives of Jewish, Arab, and Palestinian people in the Middle East, promoting cooperation. And Peace with Penny strives to get the word out that there is hope for peace in the region. Next week, we'd love for you to join us again, and we hope the situation will calm down in Israel and that there'll be better news for the people of Ukraine and Russia. For now, we'll leave you as we pray that everyone will someday live in peace, shalom, and salam.